Hey there. Welcome to Millennium Milestone Presents, a site dedicated to storytelling in books, movies, video games, and other exciting genres, encouraging you to please like, share, and subscribe, or we just might have Kay pay you a visit. You really don't want him to pay you a visit, do you?
Are you with us?
No.
So we reached the end of Andor Season 2, the series finale to the two-part series that was started by Disney Plus for Disney Star Wars. And, yep, this has been quite a run of a series, I gotta admit. I will admit, the first 6 episodes of Andor Season 2 didn't quite get me excited. I wasn't even excited when the first season was announced years ago, because the first question I asked myself when this was even a thought was, why this character? Why do we need a backstory on someone that was just serving to give us context to A New Hope? Why do we need more context to a character that was giving context to another? Well, we finally got our answer for the most part, even in the second season. And I will say, like I said, the first 6 episodes made me feel like this was not really a series I wanted to see. But when we got to the latter half, boy, did that change my mind. And we'll get into that right now. So just to recap a little bit to what was going on in the previous episodes, we were seeing the Empire set up this sort of campaign to discredit the people of Gorum, to set up a bogus story that would allow them to basically take over the planet. And finally that plan comes into fruition here as the setup is now coming into way. Deirdre is now on the planet Gorum, ready to set up this plan and into action, as well as Cyril, who's also been working for quite some time. But we also see that he is now having misgivings about what exactly it is that he's trying to accomplish for the Empire. Meanwhile, on Yavin, where Andor has been hiding all this time, he and Bix have been sort of trying to rekindle the relationship and get things back to a more calm base. But then soon, something sparks a very sudden change in their dynamic. They enter into a village in Yavin where a force healer is there to help Andor heal his shoulder, which was injured in an accident from one of his missions. What happens that becomes amazing is that before he even approaches the woman already turned, looking directly at Andor. And this is where probably I already started to begin to have chills about the series at this point. This force user not only walked up to Andor, realizing how important he was, she asked the very most important question, who are you? And in that instant conversation, it was revealed, at least not directly, but in her own words, that he was to be the spark of something important. And that he could feel it, everyone can feel it. This new message forces Bix to make a very difficult decision, which leads to her ultimately leaving Andor forever and never coming back, leaving a message, basically a Dear John letter to him, indicating that she won't be back until the rebellion is over. So that's that episode to start with. Alright, so a little bit of course correction. I just realized, checking some of the episodes, scenes from the episode. Andor actually is visited also by Bix's brother and is given intel that something is going on in Gorman and he needs to be there. So a mission is set to go there, and not the reason being is that now he is aware that Deirdre is on the planet, the woman that killed his mother, and he has the opportunity to finally kill her. So he goes on this mission to get ready for that, and that sets up for the next episode. So time has passed, and now the trap is about to be sprung on Gorman by the Empire. They send Imperial troops to set up barricades at the center of the city at a monument that is sacred to the people of Gorman. And now this insinuates a protest against them, which they use under disguise to also be an insurgency that forces the Empire to fight back and attack the people of Gorman. Andor and Bix's brother are caught in the crossfire of this entire insurgency and this chaos, as well as Cyril, which leads to all plots starting to meander close to each other, which also leads to Cyril and Andor facing off for the first time in years, and Cyril finally having his opportunity to kill him, and realizing, after everything he's done, after all this effort, it was all waste. Moments earlier, Cyril had had a spat with Deirdre, finding out for the first time that all of this was a ruse that he was orchestrating for the Empire. Distraught and completely disillusioned by what he'd done, he nearly chokes Deirdre and just leaves, looking to try and stop this incident, but is completely powerless to do anything about it. Unfortunately, not only is he powerless to do anything about it, his anger and desire for revenge against Andor clouds his judgment to the point that, unfortunately, he meets his demise here. So for this middle of the 3 episode arc, this did impress me. Because I'll admit that, like I said before, the 6 original episodes leading up to this were boring, but clearly were set up leading up to this point. And when we got to Gorman, you really felt the dread, the darkness, the threat that the Empire really posed. Before, when you had New Hope or even Return of the Jedi, you had just a Death Star, you had the TIE Fighters and, the troops. But here, you saw the ISB themselves be the real villains that they truly are in Star Wars. And that impressed me for the most part. And credit to Critical Drinker, I had all but given up on watching most of Andor, but when he mentioned that this was by far the much better of the entire series, these 3 episodes, I have to agree he was right on that. And that's something that, is brings an interesting point for me to think about, is learning to be objective when watching shows like this. While I do have a difference of opinion when it comes to this being Star Wars, that's a completely different conversation. Andor is a good show. That is something I can at least attest to. And the hits don't stop right there. The next episode is even greater as we pick up where we left off with the end of the Gorum massacre. Bail Organa walks into the Senate halls, finding out that the senator of Gorum is now arrested, and that basically the Empire has taken siege of the entire planet at this point. The concern is written not only on his face, but that of Mon Mothma, who makes the crucial decision to finally unravel her speech at the Senate tomorrow and speak out against the Emperor for the first time. Bail tries to convince her not to do this, that this is very incredibly dangerous, but Mon Mothma has made up her mind, this is it. And now this leads to other factors that come into play. For instance, Luthen catches wind of what Mon Mothma's planning to do, and also brings in important, valuable intel, telling her that basically Bail's team that's going to rescue her and transport her to Yavin is compromised, and she cannot go with them, let alone tell them. She finds out in this conversation that her assistant, her male assistant that is, has been protecting her this whole time. This distraughts her even further, as she had already trusted Luthen once before and had her best friend killed when he became compromised as well. So now Luthen is doing his best to try and show her that he can still be trusted, and is orchestrating a plan to have someone come get her, telling her that I have friends everywhere and this is the person to run with when she makes her speech. That someone ends up being Andor, who orchestrates a brilliant plan to go right into the Senate building and basically get Mon Mothma out of there. And it is revealed, just as Luthen had told her, that one of the agents that are helping her to escape to Yavin 4 is in fact an ISB spy, and kills one of the Republic rebels in the process of trying to get her. Andor manages to cut them at the pass and get her out of there in time. And again, this back and forth goes for a bit before finally they escape to his hideout in Coruscant and eventually transport her to Yavin, where now the beginnings of the rebellion can now be formed with her leadership in play. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention a certain droid finally made his appearance on this show.
If not, I'd appreciate you pointing that elsewhere.
So that sums up the first 3 episodes, and now we finally get on to the final 3 episodes of Andor. And this is where, again, the last 3 we just mentioned definitely pushed this to a whole new level. But now this is where I question a lot of things about Andor in its entirety. But let's get into the main story itself. The first story begins with Luthen about a year later, who is now discovered as being the one that has been orchestrating everything from the beginning, and is now caught by Deidre and the ISB, and is taken away at this point. All this happens because Lonnie Jung, Luthen's spy for the Imperials, finally discovers what the Empire has been doing all this time. He reveals to Luthen, also mentioning that he has risked everything for this, that he got Deidre's certifications and found out that the massacre at Gorum was a front for mining kyber crystals. This is the revelation, of course, of the Death Star being built for the past 10 years, and that this is going to be used against the entire Republic as a weapon to maintain full control over every planet throughout the entire system. Luthen, of course, has no choice but to take the information and eventually rub out Jung to cover his tracks and leave the information with his assistant. That assistant being Clea, who not only tries to contact Andor, but discovers that Luthen's been taken and has no choice but to orchestrate a way for her to get inside to the hospital and do, unfortunately, the only option that she has, which is to end Luthen's life and cover all tracks leading back to him as well as her and the rest of the rebellion. We also get backstory on how the two of them met about a decade or so ago, and how they became partners in learning how to orchestrate attacks against the Empire before forming this undercover operation that gets exposed eventually. This all becomes the setup to the next episode, where Clea frantically tries to contact Andor to get all the information that she's gathered back to him. Meanwhile, ISB supervisor Hurt tracks down Clea and sends his officers to finally capture her and bring her back after identifying her as Access's assistant that's been involved in the rebellion attacks. Word finally gets to Andor, who makes his decision to go with Melshi and Kay back to Coruscant and make the rescue mission to get Clea out of there. When they finally find her, she is only determined to give the information and remain on Coruscant, but Andor isn't having it and it tells her she needs to come. All this, unfortunately, gets interrupted when the ISB officers finally make their arrival at the location and attack Andor head-on at the apartment building that they're hiding in. Kay, who just barely manages to catch that the ISB is there, intervenes and rescues everyone before they are captured and escape from Coruscant. So some of the loose ends that are tied up finally towards the end of the three-part episodes. Deidre, unfortunately, is put in lockup for her role in botching the investigation of Luthen, which she had no authorization to do, as basically in the same prison that Andor ended up in Season 1. Going back to Andor, who finally gets Clea back to Yavin, finally the information is relayed to the rest of the leaders of the Republic that the Empire is building some sort of weapon. But, as usual, politics play into it, and nobody is truly convinced of this until further intel, which, hint hint, is brought up in Rogue One. If you haven't seen that movie, well, I suggest you go see it if you haven't already. Then, of course, the final length the series ends with, of course, Andor ready to embark on yet another mission, which is the lead-up to the beginning of Rogue One, where he finds out everything as to who is involved in the creation of the Death Star. So that pretty much sums up the entirety of Andor for the most part. There are other bits and story arcs that I didn't want to mention because, again, Andor is a very interesting series to enjoy by itself as a series that is definitely, I wouldn't say necessarily separate from Star Wars, but it definitely has its own tone and style that definitely divides fandom in its own right. Now, how do I feel about it myself personally? I do enjoy the storytelling in this. It was very different from anything I've seen before. But I would be remiss if I didn't at least acknowledge, at least from my part, would I compare this to the whole of Star Wars as being the future where Star Wars should go? I would venture to say no. I know I'm going to get the looks for this in the comments are going to be blistered with people saying, how dare you say something bad about Andor? And again, this is me trying to be objective about what it is about Andor that I like and don't like. Do I like Andor by itself? Absolutely. Do I like the setup for this that led up to it? Yes. I was definitely surprised by Tony Gilroy and what he had put together in this final part of the series. But does this move the needle for Star Wars is the biggest concern for me. And judging from what Lucasfilm has been putting out these past few years, I still venture to say no, this does not really move the needle. It also doesn't help that viewership for Andor is not much better than it was last year. It may be a little bit better than last year. I haven't looked at the official numbers this time around, but from what I've gathered so far, it's not moving the needle. And that is a shame because, sadly, many people are starting to believe that Star Wars has died for the most part. And I'm almost inclined to agree for the most part. And as much as I'm looking forward to The Mandalorian and Grogu coming out, I am also resigned to the fact that even that won't be enough to save Star Wars at this time. Where the franchise will go is a very interesting question to ask, as, of course, they're still in the process of announcing and unannouncing projects that seem to never happen. But we're just going to have to ride this wave and enjoy the little bit that we did got from Andor. Andor is definitely up there as probably one of the best that Disney Plus Star Wars has given us. Will we get anything better than that? Well, that remains to be seen. I'm going to be cautiously optimistic of what we get with the Mandalorian Grogu, and we'll see with what happens with Ahsoka. I was not 100% thrilled with the way it was presented, but hopefully Season 2 might change my mind about that even more so. Again, I'm going to be objective with each project that comes out from Lucasfilm. Will I be as harsh as I've been with perhaps The Acolyte or even The Last Jedi? I can't promise that. I will always try my best to look at each Star Wars event that comes out and give it the best opinion I can give at this time. So all in all, Andor, I would give it above average rating, maybe roughly around just on excellent, and I'm willing to give excellent to this. It's an excellent series by itself. I think the problem that I am resigning to see with it is that it tries to be Blade Runner than Star Wars. And I think that's what's really going on with the fandom, is that there is this niche group of people that want that style of storytelling as opposed to the fantasy sci-fi style of Star Wars that many have come to love. And where is that happy medium? Well, we're just going to have to wait and see. Well, that's everything I'm going to say about Andor for the most part. Hopefully some of you have thoughts about maybe the future Star Wars, and maybe something that might change my mind as to where we're going with Star Wars at this point. Like, share, and subscribe, and like I always say in every video at the outro, you best better believe I'll be back.